At 57, I had learned to navigate the humid Florida heat with practiced precision, but today felt different. The air conditioning of the shops at Merrick Park offered sweet relief as the automatic glass doors whispered shut behind me, sealing out the oppressive heat that seemed to press against the glass like an unwelcome visitor. I paused near the fountain at the mall center, watching the crystal water dance in choreographed arcs that caught the afternoon light filtering through the skylights above. The luxury shopping center buzzed with its usual weekend energy, a symphony of clicking heels on marble, rustling shopping bags, and the gentle hum of dozens of conversations in multiple languages. Families with designer strollers navigated between couples clutching shopping bags from Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue, their movements creating a carefully orchestrated ballet of commerce and leisure. The polished marble floors reflected the warm glow of carefully positioned lighting, creating an atmosphere of refined elegance that had drawn me here despite my usual preference for quieter venues. This wasn't my natural habitat, and I knew it. The shops at Merrick Park catered to a clientele that embodied everything Miami represented: youth, beauty, wealth, and the kind of effortless confidence that seemed to radiate from every surface. Even the architecture spoke of aspiration, with its soaring ceilings, elegant archways, and the kind of attention to detail that whispered rather than shouted about luxury. I had come to Miami 3 months ago for a fresh start after my divorce was finalized in Chicago. The settlement had been generous enough to afford me a modest condo in Coral Gables and the freedom to reinvent myself. But reinvention, I was learning, was more complicated at my age than the self-help books suggested. The city had seemed like the perfect place to begin again when I researched it from my lawyer's office back in Illinois. The promise of year-round sunshine, cultural diversity, and the chance to disappear into a place where nobody knew my history had seemed like exactly what I needed. But 3 months in, I was beginning to understand that Miami was a city that worshipped at the altar of youth and beauty, where age was something to be hidden or surgically erased, and where my particular brand of middle-aged invisibility felt more pronounced than it ever had in the Midwest. In Chicago, I had been part of a community, even during the difficult final years of my marriage. Here I was starting from scratch, trying to build a social circle and sense of belonging in a place that seemed designed for people half my age. My reflection in the storefront window of Tiffany & Co. showed a woman who had gained weight during the stressful final years of her marriage. The 24-year union had ended not with drama or betrayal, but with the slow erosion of connection that sometimes happens when two people grow in different directions. Richard had become increasingly absorbed in his work as a corporate lawyer, while I had struggled with depression and anxiety that manifested in emotional eating and social withdrawal. The divorce had been amicable but devastating, leaving me not just alone, but uncertain about who I was without the identity of being someone's wife. My once athletic frame now carried an extra 40 pounds, distributed unevenly in ways that made shopping for clothes an exercise in frustration and disappointment. The body I had inhabited for over 5 decades felt foreign now, changed by stress, medications, and the simple passage of time in ways that the fashion industry seemed determined to ignore. Today, I wore my favorite flowing dress in navy blue, a piece I had purchased online after hours of research into flattering styles for mature figures, paired with comfortable walking shoes and a light scarf that I hoped would camouflage what I saw as my most obvious flaws. It represented my best attempt at presenting myself to the world with dignity. The decision to venture into this particular mall hadn't been spontaneous. My therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, had suggested small acts of self-care as part of rebuilding my confidence. She was a warm, insightful woman in her early 40s who specialized in helping women navigate major life transitions. During our weekly sessions in her comfortable office in Coconut Grove, she'd been gently pushing me to expand my comfort zone. "Start with environments that make you feel good," she had said during our last session, her dark eyes kind but challenging. "Places where you can practice being comfortable in your own skin again. The goal isn't to become someone new, but to reconnect with who you've always been underneath all the pain and self-doubt." The irony wasn't lost on me that I had chosen one of Miami's most image-conscious shopping destinations for this exercise in self-acceptance. But something about the elegant atmosphere had called to me during my online research. Perhaps it was the memory of who I used to be or who I still hoped to become. In my 20s and 30s, I had been confident, even bold. I had traveled solo through Europe, started my own small business, worn bikinis to the beach without a second thought. That woman felt like a stranger now, but Dr. Rodriguez insisted she was still there, buried under years of accumulated hurt and self-criticism. I made my way toward the Macy's wing. My destination, a small boutique called Elegance After 50 that specialized in clothes for women over 50. I had discovered it through a Google search that had taken me down a rabbit hole of reviews and fashion blogs dedicated to age-appropriate style. The store had excellent online reviews and photos that suggested they understood the challenges of dressing a changing body with dignity and style. The owner, according to the website, was a former fashion editor who had opened the boutique after becoming frustrated with the industry's focus on youth. As I walked, I tried to channel the confidence Dr. Rodriguez had been working with me to rebuild. We had practiced visualization exercises where I imagined myself moving through challenging social situations with grace and self-assurance. Remember, she had told me, confidence isn't about believing you're perfect. It's about believing you have the right to take up space in the world, exactly as you are. The mall's central corridor stretched before me like a fashion runway, lined with gleaming storefronts and populated by people who seemed to embody the Miami ideal of effortless beauty. Young women in crop tops and designer jeans chatted animatedly while checking their phones, their skin glowing with the kind of health and vitality that seemed to be the city's unofficial currency. Men in polo shirts and expensive watches discussed business deals over espresso at the cafe, their voices carrying the confidence of people accustomed to success. Teenagers moved in packs, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings as they ducked in and out of stores with the kind of unself-conscious energy that I envied. Everyone seemed to belong here in a way that I wasn't sure I did. They moved with the kind of casual ownership of space that comes from never having been made to feel unwelcome or out of place. I, on the other hand, felt hyper-aware of every step, every glance from strangers, every potential moment of judgment or rejection. But I pressed forward, reminding myself of the progress I had made. 3 months ago, I barely left my condo except for grocery runs and therapy appointments. The first few weeks after moving to Miami had been the darkest of my life, spent mostly in bed watching Netflix and ordering takeout. It was Dr. Rodriguez who had finally convinced me to start small, with walks around my neighborhood, then visits to the local library, then coffee at a cafe near my building. Today, I was here in public, attempting something as normal as clothes shopping. It was a victory, even if it didn't feel like one yet. As I approached the boutique, I noticed 2 young women near the entrance to Forever 21, their heads bent together in animated conversation. They couldn't have been more than 25, both blessed with the kind of natural beauty that Florida seemed to cultivate like a hothouse flower. One was blonde with sun-kissed skin and perfectly straight teeth that spoke of expensive orthodontics, wearing a white sundress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The fabric was clearly high quality, the kind of effortless elegance that money could buy. The other had dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail that showed off her sculpted cheekbones and wore a crop top that revealed a flat midriff adorned with a delicate gold chain. Her designer jeans fit like they had been custom-made, and her handbag bore the unmistakable logo of a luxury brand. They were the picture of everything I had never been, even in my youth and everything I certainly wasn't now. In their presence, I felt every one of my 57 years, every pound of extra weight, every line and gray hair that marked me as belonging to a different generation. But I had learned in therapy to notice these thoughts without letting them derail my progress. Comparison is the thief of joy, Dr. Rodriguez often reminded me, quoting Theodore Roosevelt. Your journey is your own, and it's no less valuable because it looks different from someone else's. I slowed my pace as I passed them, not wanting to appear as though I was hurrying to avoid them, but also not eager to linger in their vicinity longer than necessary. The boutique was just 20 feet away, close enough that I could see through the window to the welcoming interior beyond. The sales associate, a woman who appeared to be close to my age, was arranging a display of colorful scarves with the kind of attention to detail that suggested she truly cared about her work. She had been so helpful when I called earlier in the week, listening patiently as I explained my situation and assuring me that they specialized in helping women find their confidence through clothing. The blonde girl looked up as I passed, her gaze flickering over me with the kind of casual assessment that young, beautiful people often made without thinking. It wasn't necessarily malicious, just the automatic cataloging that happens when one person encounters another in a shared space. But I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, the urge to adjust my cardigan again or fix my hair, the instinctive response to being observed and potentially found wanting. I forced myself to keep walking at a steady pace, my eyes fixed on my destination. Almost there, just a few more steps and I would be in the safety of the boutique, where I could focus on the positive task ahead rather than my insecurities. The sales associate had promised to help me find pieces that would flatter my figure and make me feel confident. She had talked about color analysis and understanding my body type, about the difference between hiding and enhancing, about clothes as tools of empowerment rather than camouflage. It was exactly what I needed to hear and exactly what I needed to experience. But as I drew closer to my destination, I heard something that stopped me cold. A giggle, soft at first, then growing louder. Then another voice joining in, creating a harmony of amusement that seemed to follow me like a soundtrack I hadn't requested. The sound seemed to have a physical weight, pressing against my shoulders and making each step more difficult than the last. Despite my best efforts to ignore it, I found myself slowing down, then stopping altogether. The rational part of my mind tried to maintain control. They could be laughing about anything, I told myself. A funny text message, a memory from the night before, something they had seen earlier in the day. The fact that their laughter had started just as I passed them was probably nothing more than coincidence. I turned slightly, not wanting to be obvious about it, and caught sight of the two young women again. They were looking in my direction now, no longer bothering to hide their conversation. The blonde one whispered something to her friend, her lips curved in a smile that didn't seem entirely kind. They both dissolved into laughter that echoed off the high ceiling of the mall corridor, the sound seeming to multiply and bounce back at me from every polished surface. My heart began to race, and I felt the familiar heat of embarrassment creeping up my neck like a spreading stain. This was exactly what Dr. Rodriguez and I had worked on preparing for, the kind of situation that had kept me isolated for so long after my divorce became final. The rational part of my mind tried to take control, reciting the coping strategies we had practiced. They might not even be looking at me. They could be laughing about anything. Even if they were laughing at me, their opinions didn't define my worth. I was worthy of respect and kindness simply by virtue of being human, but the louder, meaner voice in my head, the one that had grown stronger during the lonely final years of my marriage, had a different interpretation. They were laughing at me, at my dress, my body, my age, my very presence in this space where I clearly didn't belong. They could see through my careful efforts at dignity to the broken, desperate woman underneath. They knew I was pretending to be someone I wasn't, trying to claim a place in a world that had moved on without me. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds, frozen between moving forward to the boutique and fleeing back to my car. The laughter continued, seeming to grow louder with each passing moment, though I couldn't tell if that was reality or my own anxiety amplifying the sound. Other shoppers began to notice the commotion, some glancing over with curiosity, others pretending not to see, while clearly listening to whatever drama was unfolding. A family with 2 small children had slowed their progress near the Disney store, the parents exchanging glances that suggested they were trying to decide whether to intervene or simply move their children away from whatever was happening. An elderly man sitting on a bench looked up from his newspaper, his expression unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. 3 teenage girls near the Sephora entrance had paused their own shopping to watch, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and uncomfortable recognition that this could easily be them in someone else's crosshairs. This was my moment of truth. Everything I had worked on with Dr. Rodriguez, all the small steps toward reclaiming my confidence, came down to what I did next. I could let these strangers' behavior drive me away, confirming all my worst fears about myself and proving that I really didn't belong in places like this. Or I could hold my ground, complete my mission, and prove to myself that I had as much right to be here as anyone else. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool recycled air fill my lungs, and turned fully toward the boutique. The sales associate had noticed me through the window and was smiling encouragingly, perhaps sensing that I was struggling with something. Her expression was kind and welcoming, free of the judgment I imagined I was seeing everywhere else. I was determined to walk the final 20 feet with as much dignity as I could muster. Whatever happened next, I would not let fear win today. Not after coming this far. Not after working so hard to get to this point. Dr. Rodriguez had warned me that recovery wasn't linear, that there would be setbacks and challenges. But she had also told me that each time I faced a difficult situation and chose courage over fear, I was building strength for the next challenge. The boutique door was so close I could see the brass handle gleaming in the afternoon light. 20 feet might as well have been 20 miles given how exposed and vulnerable I felt. But I was going to cross that distance no matter what it cost me. I had taken exactly 3 steps toward the boutique when the laughter behind me transformed into something more sinister and deliberate. What had been giggles and whispers suddenly became clear, purposeful words that cut through the ambient noise of the shopping mall like shards of glass piercing skin. "Oh my God, look at that disgusting old woman," the blonde one said, her voice carrying easily across the polished marble floor. She wasn't even trying to be discreet anymore, speaking with the kind of casual cruelty that suggested she had never been held accountable for the impact of her words on others. I froze mid-step, my hand instinctively reaching for the wall to steady myself as the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The familiar spinning sensation I had experienced so often during the worst months of my marriage returned with a vengeance, that feeling of being caught in a whirlpool of shame and helplessness. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now, when I had worked so hard to build up the courage to leave my safe little bubble and venture into the world again. "She's so fat and gross," the brunette chimed in, her voice equally loud and deliberately cruel. The words were delivered with the kind of casual viciousness that suggested this was entertainment for them, a diversion to break up the monotony of their shopping trip. Like, who even let her out of the house looking like that? Doesn't she have any friends to tell her the truth? The words hit me like physical blows, each syllable landing with precision on every insecurity I had ever harbored about my appearance. My chest tightened, and I struggled to draw a full breath as the mall corridor began to feel less like a public space and more like a fishbowl, with me as the unfortunate specimen on display for everyone's amusement or horror. "Seriously, it's like she doesn't even own a mirror," the blonde continued, her voice rising with excitement at having found a target for her cruelty. "I can't believe she thought she could just waddle around here like she belongs. This is a nice place, you know. There should be standards." The word waddle hit me like a slap. It was chosen specifically to dehumanize, to reduce me to something less than human, an object of ridicule rather than a person with feelings and dignity. I wanted to disappear, to evaporate into the recycled air of the shopping center and reappear safely, back in my condo where no one could see me or judge me or turn my very existence into their afternoon entertainment. My hands were shaking now, and I gripped my purse tighter to try to stop the trembling. Every insecurity I had ever harbored about my appearance came flooding back, multiplied by the public nature of this humiliation. This was exactly why I had avoided situations like this for so long, why I had ordered clothes online and had groceries delivered and found 1,000 excuses to stay hidden away from the world. Because somewhere deep down, I had always known this moment would come, when someone would say out loud all the things I feared people were thinking about me. Dr. Rodriguez had warned me that setbacks were part of the healing process, but she had also armed me with tools to handle situations like this. "Your worth isn't determined by others' opinions," I repeated silently, trying to summon her calm, steady voice from our sessions. "You have every right to be wherever you choose to be. Other people's cruelty says everything about them and nothing about you. But the affirmations felt hollow and insubstantial against the reality of standing here, exposed and vulnerable, while two strangers dissected my appearance for the entertainment of anyone within earshot. The careful work of building self-confidence felt like it was crumbling in real time, undone by a few carelessly cruel words from people who didn't even know my name. "I bet she's one of those people who thinks she's body positive," the brunette said, making air quotes with perfectly manicured fingers that caught the light from the overhead fixtures. "Like, no, honey, there's nothing positive about letting yourself go like that. It's just giving up on yourself." Their laughter erupted again, louder this time, feeding off each other's cruelty in the way that bullies often do. The sound seemed to bounce off the high ceiling and marble walls, creating an echo that made it impossible to escape. Every surface in the mall seemed designed to amplify their voices, to ensure that their words reached every corner of the corridor. I glanced around desperately, looking for somewhere to retreat, but every direction seemed to lead past more potential witnesses to my humiliation. The elegant mall that had seemed welcoming just minutes earlier now felt like a trap, with every exit requiring me to walk past more people who had heard my public shaming. A family with 2 small children had stopped near the Disney store. The parents clearly uncomfortable, but apparently unable to tear themselves away from the spectacle. The mother was holding her daughter's hand a little tighter, while the father kept glancing between me and the 2 young women with an expression that suggested he was debating whether to intervene. An elderly man sitting on a bench was openly staring, his newspaper forgotten in his lap, his expression unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. 3 teenage girls near the Sephora entrance had pulled out their phones, and I realized with a new wave of horror that they might be recording this entire interaction. In today's world, my humiliation could be immortalized and shared across social media platforms, turned into content for strangers to consume and comment on. The thought made my stomach lurch with a fresh wave of nausea. Should we tell her about that diet program my mom did? The blonde asked her friend, loud enough for half the corridor to hear. Her voice carried the false concern of someone who wanted to appear helpful while actually delivering another blow. I mean, it might actually save her life at this point. "She looks like she's about to have a heart attack just from walking around." "Girl, I don't think any diet could help that situation," the brunette replied with mock seriousness. "That's like industrial strength obesity right there. You'd need some kind of medical intervention. Maybe one of those TV shows where they cut your stomach up." I felt tears beginning to sting my eyes, and I knew I was approaching the breaking point. Every rational coping strategy Dr. Rodriguez had taught me was crumbling under the weight of this public degradation. The breathing exercises we had practiced felt impossible when my chest was tight with anxiety. The positive self-talk felt laughable when faced with such systematic cruelty. The visualization techniques we had worked on couldn't compete with the harsh reality of what was actually happening. Part of me wanted to turn around and confront them, to tell them that their words had real power to hurt, that there was a human being standing here listening to every cruel syllable they were spewing. I wanted to ask them how they would feel if someone spoke about their mother or grandmother this way, to challenge them to see me as a person worthy of basic respect and dignity. But a larger part of me just wanted to run, to get back to my car and drive home as fast as possible and never attempt anything like this again. Maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't belong in places like this. Maybe I should accept my limitations and stop trying to pretend I could rebuild my life in such a youth-obsessed, appearance-focused city. Maybe the kindest thing I could do for everyone involved was to disappear back into my condo and order my clothes online like I had been doing. The boutique was so close I could see the concern on the sales associate's face through the window, but it might as well have been on the other side of the country. The 20 feet between me and my destination felt like an impossible distance to cross while carrying the weight of such public humiliation. How could I walk into that store now and pretend to be someone worthy of beautiful clothes and personal attention? How could I look at myself in a fitting room mirror after having my every flaw cataloged and broadcast for public consumption? "I literally cannot even look at her anymore," the blonde declared dramatically, as if my very presence was an assault on her sensibilities. "It's like, have some self-respect, you know? If you're going to go out in public looking like that, at least try to hide it better. Right? Like, if I ever get that disgusting, just put me out of my misery, her friend agreed with theatrical horror. I would literally rather die than be seen looking like that. How does she even leave the house? How does she look in the mirror and think, yes, this is fine? More shoppers had begun to notice the commotion, drawn by the increasingly loud and theatrical nature of the harassment. A well-dressed woman in her 40s was shaking her head disapprovingly, though whether at me or at my tormentors, I couldn't tell from her expression. Two men in business suits had slowed their conversation to listen, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to inappropriately amused. A group of college-age students was openly watching now, some looking horrified by what they were witnessing, others seeming to enjoy the free entertainment. I realized I was trapped in a nightmare scenario I had imagined countless times but hoped never to experience in reality. This was why I had hidden away for so long after my divorce became final. This was why I had avoided public spaces and social situations, why I had declined invitations and made excuses and built walls around myself. Because somewhere deep down, I had always known this moment would come. When someone would say out loud all the things I feared people were thinking about me every time I dared to show my face in public. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves, though they cut deep enough to leave lasting wounds. It was the public nature of the humiliation, the way it had become a spectacle for dozens of strangers to witness and judge. Even if some of them sympathized with me, I would still be remembered as the woman who got publicly shamed at the mall. The cautionary tale that people would tell their friends later about what happens when you don't know your place. We should probably move away from it before someone thinks we're together, the brunette stage whispered, triggering another round of laughter that seemed to echo endlessly through the corridor. That final comment broke something inside me. Not my spirit exactly, but my paralysis. The sheer dehumanization of being referred to as it sparked an anger that cut through my shame and fear like a knife through fabric. How dare they? How dare two strangers feel entitled to treat another human being this way, to turn my simple attempt at self-care into their afternoon entertainment? How dare they reduce me to an object, a thing to be mocked and dismissed and discarded? I turned around slowly, deliberately, to face them directly for the first time since this ordeal had begun. Both young women were grinning broadly, clearly delighted by their own cleverness and the attention they had attracted from other shoppers. They looked like predators who had cornered wounded prey and were savoring the moment before delivering the final blow. The blonde caught my eye, and her grin widened with malicious satisfaction. "Oh my God, I think it's going to say something," she announced to her friend and anyone else who cared to listen, her voice dripping with anticipation. But before I could find my voice, before I could summon the words to defend myself or ask them to stop or simply express my humanity in the face of their relentless cruelty, something unexpected happened. A new voice cut through the tension like a clean blade, calm but unmistakably authoritative, speaking with the kind of quiet confidence that immediately commanded attention from everyone in the corridor. "Excuse me, ladies. I'm going to need you to come with me." The voice belonged to a security officer who had appeared as if from nowhere, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to handling difficult situations without drama or fanfare. He was a black man in his 40s, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that commanded respect without requiring aggression. He wore the navy blue uniform of mall security, with patches indicating his name was Officer Williams, and his badge caught the light as he positioned himself between me and my tormentors. His expression was professionally neutral, but there was something in his dark eyes that suggested he had been watching this situation unfold for longer than any of us realized. There was a stillness about him, a quality of controlled authority that spoke of someone who had dealt with far worse situations than two privileged young women tormenting a middle-aged stranger. The two young women's confident grins faltered for the first time. Since their harassment campaign had begun, the blonde looked genuinely confused, as if the concept of facing consequences for her behavior had never occurred to her in her privileged existence. The brunette's mouth opened slightly, her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly looking garish under the mall's bright lighting. "I'm sorry." "What?" the blonde asked, her voice still carrying traces of the entitled tone she had used while mocking me, though now it was tinged with genuine uncertainty. She glanced around the corridor as if looking for someone to explain this unexpected interruption to her entertainment. "You heard me correctly," Officer Williams replied, his tone remaining calm, but carrying an underlying firmness that suggested he was not interested in debate or negotiation. "I need both of you to step away from this area and accompany me to the security office. Now." "For what?" the brunette demanded, her earlier cruelty now replaced by indignation and disbelief. Her voice rose slightly, causing more shoppers to turn and stare at the unfolding drama. "We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just talking. This is America. We have free speech." Officer Williams glanced around the corridor, taking in the crowd of spectators that had gathered to witness the confrontation. Some people were pretending to shop while obviously listening to every word. Others were openly staring with varying degrees of fascination and disapproval. The group of teenagers still had their phones out, though they had lowered them when security arrived, perhaps recognizing that recording this interaction might not be in their best interests. "Ma'am, what you were doing was creating a disturbance and engaging in harassment of other customers," he explained, with the patience of someone who had given this explanation many times before. His voice carried the authority of experience, the confidence of someone who knew the law and the rules and wasn't interested in creative interpretations. "This is private property, and that kind of behavior violates our code of conduct. It also creates a hostile environment for other shoppers, which is something we take very seriously here." I stood frozen in place, hardly able to process what was happening. In all my imagined versions of this scenario, during sleepless nights and therapy sessions, it had always ended with me slinking away in defeat while my tormentors celebrated their victory and moved on to their next target. The idea that someone in authority would actually intervene on my behalf had never entered my mind, not in a world where casual cruelty seemed to be accepted as normal entertainment. "Harassment?" The blonde sputtered, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide the flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck like a spreading stain. "We were just expressing our opinion about what we saw. That's called free speech, and last I checked, we still lived in America, where people are allowed to have opinions, not on private property." "It isn't," Officer Williams replied calmly, his voice never rising but somehow becoming more authoritative with each word. "And not when it's directed at harassing and intimidating other customers. You were loud, disruptive, and deliberately hurtful to another human being. Multiple people complained about your behavior. This last statement surprised me more than anything else that had happened." I glanced around the corridor with new eyes and caught the gaze of the well-dressed woman in her 40s who had been shaking her head earlier. She gave me a small, sympathetic nod that seemed to say she had witnessed everything and found it unacceptable. Near the Sephora entrance, one of the teenage girls had put away her phone and was looking at me with what appeared to be genuine concern and solidarity. Even the elderly man on the bench offered a slight smile when our eyes met, his expression conveying both sympathy and approval for the security officer's intervention. The family with small children had moved closer, and I could see the mother explaining something to her daughter in low, serious tones that suggested she was using this as a teaching moment about how not to treat other people. Officer Williams continued addressing the two women, his voice never rising but somehow becoming more commanding with each sentence. "Now, you can either come with me voluntarily and we can discuss this situation in a civilized manner, or I can call for additional security and we can make this more complicated than it needs to be. The choice is entirely yours, but those are your only options." The brunette looked around desperately, perhaps hoping to find support among the crowd of onlookers who had gathered to witness their public comeuppance. But the mood had shifted dramatically since the security officer's arrival, where before some people had seemed entertained by the cruel spectacle. Now most faces showed clear disapproval directed at the two young women rather than amusement at my expense. "This is ridiculous," she said, but her voice lacked the confidence and cruelty it had held just minutes earlier. The transformation was remarkable to witness, from predator to petulant child in the space of a few sentences from someone with actual authority. "You can't throw us out for talking. We're customers here. We spend money in this mall." "I absolutely can, and I will," Officer Williams replied with the calm certainty of someone who had dealt with entitled behavior countless times before. "This is a family-friendly shopping environment, and your behavior was inappropriate, disruptive, and harmful to other customers. You created a hostile environment for someone who has every right to shop here in peace and dignity, which is absolutely grounds for removal from the premises." The blonde grabbed her friend's arm, whispering urgently in her ear with the kind of desperate intensity that suggested she was finally grasping the seriousness of their situation. From their body language, I could tell she was arguing for compliance, perhaps recognizing that their social media-worthy afternoon of cruelty was about to turn into something that could have real consequences for them. "Fine," the blonde said finally, her voice tight with barely suppressed anger and humiliation. "But this is totally unfair. She's the one who's disgusting and inappropriate. We were just saying what everyone else was thinking." Officer Williams's expression hardened slightly at this continued display of cruelty and lack of remorse. It was clear that their complete inability to acknowledge the harm they had caused was only making their situation worse. "Ma'am, you're making this considerably worse for yourself. I strongly suggest you stop talking and start walking toward the security office." As he gestured toward the administrative area of the mall, I found myself caught between overwhelming relief and complete disbelief. This was really happening. Someone was actually standing up for me, enforcing consequences for the kind of behavior that I had assumed was just something I would have to endure as part of existing in public spaces. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like someone other than my therapist believed I deserved to be treated with basic human dignity. The brunette shot me one last venomous look as she began walking toward the security office, her designer heels clicking angrily against the marble floor. "I hope you're happy," she hissed with all the venom she could muster. "Getting us in trouble because you can't handle the truth about yourself. You're pathetic." "That's enough," Officer Williams said sharply, his voice carrying a tone of finality that cut through her attempt at a parting shot. "Keep walking and keep your mouth shut, or this conversation will be happening with Miami-Dade police instead of just mall security. And trust me, they're far less patient than I am." The threat of involving actual law enforcement seemed to finally penetrate their bubble of entitled immunity. Both young women fell silent and began walking toward the security office with considerably less swagger than they had displayed while tormenting me. The blonde sundress, which had seemed so perfect and enviable earlier, now looked wrinkled and disheveled from her agitated gesturing. The brunette's sleek ponytail had come partially undone during her animated cruelty, and her designer handbag hung awkwardly from her shoulder. As they walked away, their humiliation now on display for the same crowd that had witnessed my own. Officer Williams turned to me with an expression that combined professional concern with genuine human kindness. His demeanor shifted completely now that the immediate threat had been addressed, becoming warm and reassuring rather than authoritative and intimidating. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked gently. "Would you like to sit down for a moment and collect yourself? I know that kind of experience can be very upsetting." I realized I was still shaking, my entire body trembling with a combination of the initial shock of the harassment, the adrenaline of the confrontation, and the overwhelming surprise of the intervention. My voice felt rusty and uncertain when I finally managed to speak, as if I hadn't used it in years rather than minutes. Yes, I think I'd like that very much," I managed to say, my words coming out in a rush of gratitude and relief. He guided me with gentle professionalism to the bench where the elderly man had been sitting. The man had graciously moved aside to make room, and he patted the seat gently as I approached, his weathered face creased with genuine concern and kindness. "You sit right here, dear," he said with a warm smile that reminded me of my late father. "Those girls ought to be thoroughly ashamed of themselves. In my day, young people were taught better manners than that. I'm so sorry you had to endure such cruelty." As I settled onto the bench, feeling the cool marble through the fabric of my dress, I felt some of the tension beginning to leave my body for the first time since the ordeal had begun. The crowd of onlookers was dispersing now that the drama had concluded, people returning to their shopping with occasional glances in my direction. But the looks I was receiving now were completely different from before, sympathetic rather than judgmental, supportive rather than critical. Officer Williams sat down beside me, his radio crackling softly with routine communications from other security personnel throughout the mall. The normal sounds of commerce and conversation were gradually returning to the corridor, but there was a different quality to the atmosphere now, as if the intervention had shifted something fundamental about the space. "I want you to know that what just happened was completely unacceptable," he said, his voice carrying both professional authority and personal conviction. "Nobody should have to deal with that kind of treatment, especially not in a place where they should feel safe to shop and enjoy themselves. What those young women did was cruel, unnecessary, and absolutely against everything we stand for here." "Thank you," I managed to say, though the words felt completely inadequate to express the depth of my gratitude. I honestly didn't think anyone would. I mean, I thought I was just going to have to endure it and hope it would stop eventually. I never imagined someone would actually step in. "Not on my watch," he replied with quiet firmness that spoke of deep personal conviction. "I've been working mall security for 12 years, and I've seen far too many people think they can get away with treating others badly just because they think no one's watching or no one cares enough to intervene. Well, someone is always watching, and I definitely care about making sure every person who comes here feels respected and safe." The elderly man beside me nodded approvingly, his newspaper folded neatly in his lap. "About time someone stood up to bullies like that," he said with satisfaction. In my generation, young people were taught to respect their elders and treat everyone with basic human decency. I don't know what's happened to common courtesy these days. Officer Williams smiled slightly at the comment. "Well, most young people are perfectly respectful and kind. Unfortunately, sometimes the worst ones are also the loudest and most visible, which gives everyone else a bad reputation." He turned back to me with gentle concern. "Would you like me to escort you to wherever you were headed? Just to make sure you feel safe completing your business here and that those women don't decide to come back and cause more trouble?" I looked toward the boutique, which still beckoned invitingly just 20 feet away. Through the window, I could see that the sales associate had witnessed the entire incident, and she was now watching with obvious concern and what appeared to be admiration for Officer Williams's intervention. She caught my eye through the glass and waved encouragingly, her expression conveying both sympathy for what I had endured and genuine welcome to her store. "I was going to that boutique," I said, pointing toward my original destination with a trembling finger. "I had made an appointment to look at some clothes. I've been working on rebuilding my confidence after a difficult period in my life, and this shopping trip was supposed to be a positive step forward." "Well then," Officer Williams said, standing up and offering me his arm with old-fashioned courtesy, "let me walk you over there personally. After what you've been through today, you deserve to have the most pleasant shopping experience possible. And I want to make sure those women understand that their behavior has consequences that extend beyond just being asked to leave." As we walked the short distance to the boutique, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, maybe years. Not just relief at being rescued from an impossible situation, but a profound sense of validation and worth. Someone had seen what happened to me and decided it was wrong. Someone had taken action to protect me and hold the perpetrators accountable. For the first time since my divorce had been finalized, I felt like I mattered to someone other than my therapist. The boutique door chimed softly as Officer Williams held it open for me with practiced gallantry. The sales associate, whose name, Tag identified her as Elena, hurried over with a warm, welcoming smile that immediately made the ugly incident outside feel like it belonged to a different world. "I saw what happened out there through the window," she said softly, her voice full of genuine concern and compassion. "I'm so very sorry you had to go through such a horrible experience. But I'm incredibly grateful that Officer Williams was there to handle the situation." She turned to him with obvious respect and admiration. "Thank you so much for taking action when you saw someone being treated so cruelly." Just doing my job, he replied modestly, though I could see he was pleased by her recognition. But it's more than just maintaining order in this mall. It's my responsibility to make sure every single person who comes here feels safe, respected, and valued. What those young women did was wrong on every level, and they needed to face real consequences for their actions. Elena nodded emphatically. I've been working in retail for 15 years, and I've seen too many incidents where people think they can treat others badly without any consequences. It's refreshing to see someone in authority actually take a stand for what's right. As Officer Williams prepared to leave and return to his duties, I felt compelled to express my gratitude one more time. I want you to know how much your intervention meant to me, I said, my voice stronger now than it had been earlier. You didn't have to do that, and the fact that you chose to step in and defend a complete stranger. It means more than I can adequately express. Yes, I did have to do it, he replied, with conviction that came from deep personal values rather than just professional obligation. It's not just my job to maintain order in this mall, it's my responsibility as a human being to stand up when I see someone being treated with cruelty and disrespect. What those young women did was wrong, period, and they needed to understand that their actions have consequences in the real world. Elena placed a gentle, reassuring hand on my arm as Officer Williams left to return to his duties. Now, she said with the kind of professional warmth and genuine care that immediately put me at ease. Let's find you some absolutely beautiful clothes that make you feel as wonderful and valuable as you truly are. I have some pieces that I think will be absolutely perfect for you, and I want this to be the positive, empowering experience you came here to have. Walking deeper into the boutique felt like stepping into a completely different universe after the storm I had just weathered in the mall corridor. Elena's welcoming presence and the store's carefully curated atmosphere of elegance and comfort created an immediate sense of sanctuary that I had been desperately craving since the harassment began. Please, have a seat in our consultation area, Elena said, guiding me to a plush armchair positioned strategically near the fitting rooms. The chair was upholstered in soft cream fabric and positioned to take advantage of the most flattering lighting in the store. Can I get you some water or perhaps some herbal tea? You look like you could use a moment to collect yourself and let your nervous system settle after such a traumatic experience. I accepted the offer of water gratefully, my mouth still dry from the adrenaline and stress of the confrontation. As Elena bustled around preparing my drink with practiced care, I took in the boutique's thoughtfully designed interior with new appreciation. Unlike the harsh fluorescent lighting and crowded, overwhelming racks of department stores, this space felt intimate and welcoming, designed to make women feel comfortable and valued rather than scrutinized and judged. Clothes were displayed with generous breathing room, allowing each piece to shine and be appreciated individually. The lighting was soft and warm, the kind that made everyone look their best rather than highlighting every flaw. Everything from the plush carpet to the carefully chosen background music seemed selected specifically to make customers feel comfortable, relaxed, and valued. Even the mirrors appeared to be positioned at the most flattering angles. You know, Elena said, as she handed me a glass of ice water with a slice of fresh lemon and a sprig of mint. I've been working in retail for 15 years, across 3 different states, and I've never seen anything quite like what Officer Williams did out there. Most security guards would have just told everyone to keep moving and tried to disperse the crowd. But he actually held those women accountable for their behavior and treated you with the dignity and respect you deserved. I sipped the water slowly, feeling my heart rate finally beginning to return to something approaching normal for the first time since the ordeal had begun. I still can't fully believe it happened at all, I admitted, my voice still slightly shaky. Both the harassment and the intervention. I've been so afraid of situations like this for so long, and now that I've actually lived through it. How do you feel? Elena asked, settling into a matching chair across from me with the kind of patient, focused attention that suggested she had all the time in the world for this conversation. Her genuine interest in my emotional state felt like a revelation after years of feeling invisible and unimportant. I considered her question carefully, taking inventory of my emotional state with the kind of self-awareness that months of therapy had taught me. The initial shock and humiliation were still there, creating a dull ache in my chest, but they were being gradually replaced by something more complex and ultimately more positive. Strangely empowered, I said finally, surprised by my own honesty and insight. I mean, what those women said was horrible and hurtful, and I'm sure I'll be processing the impact of their words for days or weeks to come. But seeing that there are people like Officer Williams who won't tolerate that kind of behavior, and people like you who create spaces where everyone feels welcome and valued, it makes me feel significantly less alone in the world. Elena smiled warmly, her eyes lighting up with genuine pleasure at my response. That's exactly why I decided to open this boutique 5 years ago. I was tired of watching women your age get ignored, dismissed, or actively discriminated against by the fashion industry. Every woman deserves to feel beautiful, confident, and valued, regardless of her age, size, economic status, or any other factor that society might use to judge her worth. As if summoned by our conversation about moving forward, my phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Rodriguez. How did the shopping trip go? Remember, even small victories count as significant progress, and setbacks are just opportunities to practice resilience. I found myself smiling genuinely for the first time in hours as I typed back, "It was incredibly complicated and challenging, but I'm still here and I'm still shopping. I survived something I've been afraid of for years, and I learned that there are good people who will stand up for what's right. I'll tell you all about it at our next session." Elena had been watching me with the practiced eye of someone skilled at reading her customers' needs and emotional states. "I think I have some absolutely perfect pieces for you," she said with growing enthusiasm. "But first, tell me what you're looking for today. Is this for any particular occasion, or are you just updating your wardrobe as part of your new life here in Miami?" "I'm trying to rebuild my confidence and sense of self after a major life transition," I explained, surprised by my own willingness to be vulnerable and honest with someone I had just met. "I've been hiding away from the world for far too long, and I'm ready to start feeling like myself again. Or maybe more accurately, I'm ready to discover who I am now at this stage of my life." "I absolutely love that journey," Elena said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm and genuine investment in my success. Transformation through fashion is one of my very favorite challenges because it's not really about the clothes at all. It's about helping women reconnect with their authentic selves and express their inner confidence through their outward appearance. She began moving through the store with purpose and expertise, pulling pieces from various racks with the kind of careful consideration that spoke of years of experience and genuine talent. Each selection was clearly made with thoughtful attention to my body type, skin tone, and personal style preferences. A flowing tunic in a beautiful teal that would complement my complexion perfectly. A pair of expertly cut pants in a comfortable, high-quality fabric that promised both style and ease of movement. A cardigan in the softest cashmere I had ever felt, in a color that would work with multiple outfits. The key to dressing successfully at any age or size, Elena explained as she carefully arranged the clothing in the spacious fitting room, is finding pieces that work harmoniously with your body exactly as it is right now, not as you wish it were or as it used to be. When you feel genuinely comfortable and confident in what you're wearing, that energy radiates outward and becomes the most important accessory you can possibly have. The first outfit I tried on was nothing short of a revelation. The tunic skimmed gracefully over areas I considered problematic while highlighting features I had forgotten I possessed. The pants fit like they had been custom-made for my specific body, and the overall silhouette was both flattering and comfortable. When I looked in the fitting room mirror, I saw not the disgusting old woman those cruel girls had described, but a mature woman with inherent dignity, style, and worth. "Let me see how you look," Elena called from outside the fitting room, and I realized with surprise that I was actually eager to show her, rather than dreading the moment of revelation and potential judgment. I stepped out of the fitting room with newfound confidence to find Elena waiting with an expression of genuine delight and approval. "Oh my goodness, you look absolutely stunning," she said, and I could tell from her tone and body language that she meant every word. "That color is absolutely perfect for your skin tone, and the cut is incredibly flattering. You look elegant, confident, and beautiful." As I stood in front of the three-way mirror in the main area of the boutique, examining myself from multiple angles, I caught sight of movement through the large front window. Officer Williams was walking past on his regular security rounds, and when he saw me standing there in my new outfit, he stopped and gave me an encouraging thumbs up, accompanied by a warm, genuine smile. The gesture was small, but it filled me with an unexpected warmth and sense of connection. "He's been checking on the boutique every 10 or 15 minutes since he dropped you off," Elena observed with obvious affection and respect. "I think he wanted to make absolutely sure those women didn't decide to come back and bother you again. He really takes his responsibility to protect people seriously. The idea that someone was actively looking out for my well-being, even a relative stranger simply doing his job with exceptional care and dedication, felt profoundly meaningful after so many months of feeling invisible, unprotected, and forgotten by the world." We spent the next hour and a half trying on different combinations of clothing, with Elena acting as both professional stylist and informal therapist. She had an extraordinary gift for seeing not just what looked objectively good, but what made me feel confident, comfortable, and authentically myself. By the time we were finished with our fashion consultation, I had selected several key pieces that would form the foundation of a wardrobe suited to my new life in Miami and my evolving sense of self. As Elena rang up my purchases with obvious pleasure and satisfaction, she chatted easily about the local area, offering recommendations for restaurants, cultural events, and activities that might interest me. "There's a wonderful book club that meets every other Tuesday evening at the Barnes & Noble near your neighborhood in Coral Gables," she mentioned casually. "It's a very welcoming group of women from all different backgrounds and life stages. I think you'd fit right in and make some wonderful new friends." The suggestion that I would fit in anywhere, let alone in a social group, felt like a small miracle after the day's earlier events and the months of isolation that had preceded this shopping trip. As I signed my credit card receipt, I realized that this experience, which had started as a simple exercise in building confidence through retail therapy, had transformed into something much more significant and meaningful. It had become a genuine test of my resilience and a profound discovery of my own inherent worth and dignity. "Elena," I said, as she carefully folded my new clothes into elegant shopping bags with tissue paper and ribbon, "I want you to know how much everything you've done today has meant to me. Not just helping me find beautiful clothes, but for making me feel truly welcome, valued, and seen as a whole person worthy of respect and care." "That's exactly what we're here for," she replied with warmth and sincerity. "I hope you'll come back soon and tell me how you feel wearing these pieces out in the world. And please remember, true confidence is the most beautiful accessory you can possibly wear. And you have that in abundance, even if you don't always recognize it." As I prepared to leave the boutique, Officer Williams appeared at the door once again, his timing suggesting he had been keeping a careful eye on my progress. "I just wanted to check one more time and make sure everything went well in here," he said, with genuine concern and interest. "It was absolutely perfect," I told him with heartfelt gratitude. "And I want you to know again how much your intervention earlier meant to me. You didn't have to take such decisive action, but you chose to stand up for what was right. Yes, I absolutely did have to do it," he replied with the kind of moral conviction that seemed to come from deep personal values rather than just professional obligation. "It's not just my job to maintain order and security in this mall. It's my responsibility as a human being to stand up when I see someone being treated with cruelty and disrespect. What those young women did was fundamentally wrong, and they needed to understand that their actions have real consequences in the world." Elena handed me my shopping bags with a final encouraging smile and a business card. "You look absolutely wonderful," she said with genuine warmth. "Hold your head high when you walk out of here, and remember that you belong wherever you choose to be." And I did exactly that. As I left the boutique and walked back through the same mall corridor where I had been so cruelly humiliated just hours earlier, I felt completely transformed. Not because the new clothes had magically changed my body or erased the years, but because the entire experience had fundamentally changed my understanding of my place in the world and my own inherent worth. Other shoppers noticed me as I passed, but now I met their glances with confidence rather than anxiety or shame. Some smiled warmly, perhaps recognizing me as the woman who had been defended by security earlier and wanting to show their support. Others simply saw someone walking with genuine purpose and dignity through the elegant shopping center, and they responded with the kind of respectful acknowledgement that I had forgotten I deserved. As I reached the fountain where my ordeal had begun several hours earlier, I paused for a moment to reflect on the extraordinary events of the day. The harassment had been real, painful, and deeply traumatic, but it hadn't succeeded in breaking me or driving me back into hiding. Instead, it had revealed the fundamental kindness and justice that still existed in the world, embodied by people like Officer Williams and Elena, who chose to stand up for what was right and treat others with dignity and respect. My phone buzzed again with another supportive text from Dr. Rodriguez. Looking forward to hearing about your adventure tomorrow. I'm already proud of you for taking such a big step out of your comfort zone, regardless of how it went. I typed back with steady fingers. It was challenging and traumatic in ways I never expected, but also ultimately empowering and transformative. I can't wait to tell you everything. See you tomorrow for our session. As I walked toward the mall exit, carrying my beautiful new clothes and my hard-won sense of self-worth, my reflection in the storefront windows showed a different woman than the one who had entered those same doors hours earlier. Same body, same age, same history, but carrying herself with newfound dignity, purpose, and unshakable knowledge of her own value. The afternoon sun that had felt oppressive and unwelcoming when I arrived now felt warm and inviting as I stepped back into the Miami heat. The drive home to Coral Gables gave me time to process everything that had happened, from the initial cruelty to the unexpected intervention to the final transformation in the boutique. If this story already moved you, subscribe to the channel and leave your like so you don't miss any of our stories. Back in my condo that evening, I hung my new clothes in the closet with reverent care, running my hands over the soft fabrics and remembering how it felt to see myself looking elegant and confident in the boutique mirror. Tomorrow, I would wear one of these carefully chosen outfits to run errands around Coral Gables, and next week I might just work up the courage to try that book club Elena had mentioned. The woman who had been too afraid to leave her condo just that morning felt like a distant memory, replaced by someone who had faced her worst fear and discovered that she was far stronger and more resilient than she had ever imagined. The world, while sometimes capable of unexpected cruelty, also contained remarkable sources of protection, kindness, and justice for those brave enough to venture out and claim their rightful place in it. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized that my real transformation hadn't happened in the boutique fitting room, significant as that moment had been. It had happened in that crucial moment when Officer Williams stepped forward and declared that I deserved to be treated with basic human dignity. It had continued when Elena welcomed me into her store not as a victim to be pitied, but as a valued customer deserving of respect, attention, and care. And it would continue tomorrow, and the day after that, and for all the days to come, as I carried this new understanding of my own worth into whatever challenges and opportunities awaited me in my new life in Miami. I had learned that I was stronger than my fears, more valuable than my insecurities, and worthy of standing up for myself and demanding the respect that every human being deserves.